Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody, and welcome to Pangolin, the conservation podcast, the show dedicated to amplifying and exploring the world's underappreciated conservation stories. The stories that inspire me, and I hope will inspire you too. I'm your host, Jack Baker, and today I am very excited because I am here to talk about a hugely exciting project that I've just been involved in with a wonderful, incredible, inspiring person. I'm running out of descriptors. Brilliant, I don't know if I've said that already, brilliant Emma Greenwood, a young activist who has served as a young Member of Parliament, co-founded Youth Strike for Climate Manchester, and has recently, along with me, been working on the Chester Zoo Changemakers Toolkit, which is a brilliant online resource filled with information on podcasting, but also on protesting, on volunteering, on craftivism, on all kinds of amazing things. And yeah, I'm so excited to talk about it. So first of all, thank you so much for being here, Emma, and yeah, welcome to the show.
No, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here with you.
No, I am so excited. And for the listeners, just to give them a bit of backstory, me and Emma actually first met at Chester Zoo 3 years ago, we've just realised, which was a very scarily long time ago now. And yeah, since then, like, it's been one of these things that, like, I've seen and followed your career and journey, kind of, but we've gone off in different directions. And so it's actually so nice to sit down and be able to catch up. I'm very happy to have you here. Yeah.
I mean, it's part of why I love the conservation space as well, because I think there are so many friendships and communities that you can build, and I think that's why I wanted to get so many more people involved in it, which is where the Changemaker Toolkit comes in.
Yes, and that is a brilliant segue into, like, talking about things. It's almost as if you've done things like this before. And that, I guess, like, before we get into the Changemaker Toolkit, though, before you did provide the perfect win, but I'm gonna pause briefly and just get you to introduce yourself a little bit more formally, because I obviously, like, I go through people's LinkedIns, I go through websites, I see their careers on Instagram and all these places, but, like, yeah, I always think that you're much better equipped to tell us who you are and what you do. So, Emma, do you want to, introduce yourself to the listeners and, just say a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so as Jack mentioned, I'm Emma Greenwood. I'm a 21-year-old youth voice and climate advocate. My journey, I say, started when I was about 16, which was in 2019. And I think at the time I was kind of disenfranchised. I was angry at the fact that politics was going in a direction I didn't like, and I couldn't do that much about it because I couldn't vote. And I think I was scared as well, because all of a sudden we were having these floods in winter and these moorland fires in the summer that were once in a generation, but were happening every single year. And I was angry and scared that people didn't really seem to be taking it seriously. And so it got to a point in early 2019 where I decided to take it into my own hands and to start taking action and doing what I could at that age. And that took the form of obviously becoming a youth MP and joining the Youth Strike for Climate movement. And from that point, over the last 5 or 6 years, it's been an incredible journey of working with kind of governments, working with NGOs and charities, just trying to do lots of different environmental work. And I've found a passion, or a niche, you could say, in a lot of, like, partnerships with companies and helping them work with young people and getting that kind of intergenerational collaboration that I think is so powerful. But I know a lot of kind of adults are scared to talk to young people because of the generational differences, but I think that's something that can definitely be overcome. And I think when it is, and when adults try to actively engage and support and empower young people, incredible things happen. And so that's brought me here to where I am today.
Yeah. And what I love about that and the way that you frame that is not like I just empower. It's not like, just empowering young people is really incredible. But I think the important way that you frame it, right, is this intergenerational connection as well alongside that. Because if you focus so much on one or the other, it sometimes becomes like two sides of, when actually we all kind of want similar things. We all kind of are thinking about these issues, but we're just thinking about them in different ways. And having that collaboration back and forth is an essential part of actually solving a lot of the problems that you want to deal with, right?
Definitely, and I think especially as I've obviously grown up and my relationship with activism and campaigning has changed as it does for a lot of people. I think I've also realised the importance of not putting it all on us as young people, and I think a lot of politicians, especially in the early days of kind of when Fridays for Future and the work that Greta Thunberg was doing kind of was really big in the mainstream media, there was this kind of pressure put on young people as young as say 13 and 14 to sort of save the world and save their future. But in reality, we are still young people who are processing the whole experience of growing up and the messy process that is. And the fact is, we should be able to enjoy being young people to a certain extent. And so I think as I've grown older, and I think a lot of people that have been through a similar thing and have done campaigning and work within the environment space see the importance in young people being a part of the conversation and a part of the work, but also making sure we have the correct support, whether it's emotional support and actual, tools to know how to do them, but also understanding that it isn't all on us, and to a certain extent it is up to the adults to take control of it and be able to use the tools and resources they have as adults in the world. And so I think that collaboration and finding that balance is really, really key. And I think something definitely isn't perfect as of yet, but there's a lot more conversations in the space, which is good to see.
Yes. And I think it's hopefully something that and it's a scary one because it does take time, but it's scary to think right now that 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, attended my first Chester Zoo kind of youth summit when I was maybe 21, 22, the age you are now. And I'm now at the point where I'm like, hang on, I am the age of some of the, I'm in a job where now, because I'm that bit older, because I'm out of uni now and I finished these things, I'm now in a position that I can turn around and hopefully help the people who are the 5 years, 6 years, 7 years behind me, come up and make it easier for them, and hopefully bridge that gap between different. So it's a really exciting kind of time, and hopefully even though it has taken time, I think you can start to see that kind of balance maybe starting to happen, but we'll see. We're remaining positive. I think is yes. And I guess before we kind of get into the toolkit, I wondered, is there any other projects or examples of things that you kind of are particularly proud of, things that you're if people might be interested in this, people might know me from this, people what kind of projects are you particularly proud of?
I think, a big one at the moment that I'm working on is an app called For Planet, which is sort of a climate education app for young people. I started working on it, I want to say about 4 or 5 years ago now, when I spoke at an event with the Environment Agency, basically saying that young people, when empowered and enabled, can and will change the world. And again, it's leaning back into that idea of that young people need the tools and the equipment and the education to be able to take climate action. It can't just be something that's assumed, and I think there's a lot of access barriers that can come along with it. And so, I've been building the app with the Environment Agency, and now it's moved over to an incredible youth voice organisation called Youth Focus Northwest. It's entirely led by a youth steering group of young people who are really passionate about it, that I also sit on now and help to kind of develop the app. And I think it's just a good example of kind of what young people can do to take education into their own hands and kind of accessible and healthy ways of taking climate action in a conscious way. And it's something that I'm, again, really passionate about. And it's such a cool experience to build an app in and of itself, and a unique experience as a young person. So, but I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And it's something that a perfect indicator of how things are changing, right? Because if 5-10 years ago you were to go, oh, we need an app, we need something to engage on social media or in a different way, a lot of the time I think there would be a nervousness to do that. But I think by leading these projects, right, having young people kind of spearhead these things, hopefully that will then make it more accessible to everybody, right? That's
Definitely
that's fantastic.
Not to segue too quickly onto Chester Zoo, but I think that Chester Zoo's another great example of the youth symposiums take a very youth-led angle, but this toolkit I was given so much freedom to create it and shape it sort of as what I wish I'd had as a young person. And so, there's so many examples of that out there now, where kind of young people are being being given the tools and the independence and the funding somewhat and the resources of companies to make things that they need and they need to see in the world and things that are missing. So I think a big part of that is then getting that message out to young people and going, these people want to work with you and your voice holds power and it deserves to be out there. And I think getting that belief as young people that we deserve to use those opportunities is the next challenge. And I think something a lot of us struggle with, and I definitely do, that element of like imposter syndrome or feeling like I'm not qualified enough to do this. But I'm a big advocate, and I was told from quite a young age in Youth Voice that I think, just your lived experience as a young person is education and qualification enough. And I'm a very big preacher of that now.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, right? Is like, we still, I don't know if I think it probably is the same for you, but I don't know, even now where I'm like, and it's something that we need to encourage everyone to do, but it's not easy, because I know sometimes still, even like before, kind of leading into the toolkit, and maybe we can start to talk about that in a second, but like this kind of thing of like Chester Zoo, one of the biggest conservation organisations in the UK, one of the biggest zoos in the UK, reaches out to me for my expertise in podcasting, your expertise in kind of all of the different fields that you contributed to the toolkit in. And I still found myself being like, oh no, they're going to discover that I'm like, oh no, I'm not good enough to do that. But actually I'm like, oh no, and then it still takes a second to reset my brain and go, well, hang on. This organization wouldn't have asked me to do this if I wasn't skilled at, like, and so anyone listening out there who's maybe like in that stage of like, oh, I don't know, am I good enough? Should I be doing this? Is there organizations out there that'll care? Absolutely there is. And like, you definitely have a skill set that they will be looking for. And like, even just your perspective, as you say, is like one that so many of these different like organizations and government bodies and all sorts of different things need and would be, are so valuable to them. So yeah, brilliant. Yes, and I guess then that does kind of lead us into, we've talked around it a little bit now for about 10 minutes, but I think like we need to get into this kind of topic that we're here to talk about, which is of course the Chester Zoo Changemakers Toolkit, which I don't know, I think like I will let you intro, because you are the one who invited me to be part of it, so I will let you do the discussing. What is the toolkit? Where did it come from? Yeah, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I mean, from my perspective, I like to describe the toolkit as the thing that I think every young person looking to make a change in the conservation space should have and deserves to have. And really, it's hopefully by the end of it will be an all-rounder in terms of it's the one-stop shop to be directed to resources to start taking action, to get involved in community projects, and to find your space within that. And I think the conservation space is so wide, as it well should be. And there's so many different elements to get involved in, whether it is using craft as a form of activism, whether it's organising protests, whether it's recording podcasts, whether it's utilising social media and creating videos. There's so many assets and resources and avenues we can use and turn into a space to amplify the importance of conservation. And that's what I hope the toolkit would be. And I think I was approached with the idea of sort of going, we love what you've done. And obviously I think I started campaigning when I was 16, and I think I aspired to have the level of confidence that I had at 16, because I was there organising protests, contacting the police, doing like social media posts. We were getting stewards, we were contacting local MPs to come and speak. I think the oldest person in the group was 18, the average age was probably about 15, 16, and we were there organising these like mass scale events with absolutely no qualifications or guidance, which definitely, we had hiccups along the way, and definitely made some mistakes that I think could have been avoided and could have taken a lot of pressure off us as young people if we'd had the correct guidance and resources, which is why I think this toolkit is so important, because young people don't have to make those mistakes. And I think doing kind of campaigning or activism or conservation in whatever form it takes shouldn't be something that is of detriment to us as young people, and it needs to be sustainable and it needs to be accessible. And I really hope that this toolkit does that, and it makes the conservation and campaigning space accessible and sustainable for every young person.
Yes, yeah, I think that's brilliant. And I think what's really nice about it is, and I think something that you kind of highlighted is, it's the toolkit you wish you'd had, and you are kind of like, I think you were, as you said, very confident you were doing things, but also even if you kind of are coming into it as somebody who's nervous, not necessarily because there are little things they don't understand, even if you just have general questions about terms, right? You've never thought you care about the planet, but you don't know exactly the right wording for things, or you don't know that it goes right to basics if you need it to be like your first introduction, or if it's something that like you're coming in and you've already thought about, you kind of want to be involved in craft, or you want to be involved craftivism or podcasting or volunteering, or like if you already have an idea, it also has the kind of next step as well. So I think it's really good because it reaches across all of these different levels. And yeah, I think that was something that was like really, really exciting and interesting when I first looked at it. I was kind of like, oh, hang on, there's like whether you're coming at this from like complete beginner all the way in is really fantastic, really fantastic.
And I think that's the important thing to understand as well, is that actually as young people our level of like formal climate education, unless you choose to pursue it later down the line, is really, really minimal. And so most of what I knew was thanks to my parents, or kind of personal interest in going out there and seeking it. But that comes obviously with a lot of access barriers, and some people can't do that, and that's completely fine, and it's understandable, and these are obviously systemic barriers that are in the way for a lot of us. And so I really wanted the toolkit to help people overcome that, and again to take you on a journey, so to speak, that I think people should be able to be taken on. And I mean, even for me, I think sometimes it's important to go back to those like really foundational elements to understand why we're doing what we're doing, because it's so easy to get carried away with it. And so I love the fact that the toolkit is this kind of holistic journey and thing that can grow with you as you're trying to navigate that journey, but also you can decide to do things differently. I think is a really powerful element of it, because obviously I started off in campaigning and protesting, and I now do a lot more sort of like outreach collaboration work. And at one point when I stopped doing the protests and that side of things, I felt like I somehow was doing something wrong, and that because that's in my head was the only thing, or the only way that campaigning looked, when actually it's this much more rich and diverse area that you can get involved in. And I think the importance of understanding that, and understanding that your relationship with it and how you choose to engage in it can change as you grow older, and that's fine. And I hope the toolkit can offer you the different ways and means to try. If something stops serving you and something stops working and feeling fun and enjoyable and accessible, that's fine. Try something new, and hopefully the toolkit gives you the resources to do that.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's exactly it, right? Of like, and I think it's funny because reading through it, I'm always like, oh yeah, because I know I can do podcasting, I can do that, but actually, I've never thought about these other things because I've not seen myself as somebody like who is particularly kind of like, I've always found that I've not been very good at kind of like the craftivism, for example. Whereas, so even as somebody who maybe helped to design part of this in one section, I'm like, but I have no knowledge of the other parts. So it's actually really exciting and like, yeah, really interesting to kind of think about all the different opportunities that are there. I wondered, like, when you were approached to do this, obviously like probably a very like exciting opportunity, but a very big opportunity, right? Because you could, when somebody says, well, what do young people need? There's, well, 1,000 things that you could pick. So I wondered, like, once you were approached to do this, what was that like? And then how did you begin to kind of talk to the team at Chester and like kind of develop your sections and work out what other sections maybe should be in there? Like, yeah, how did you kind of do that?
I think it was a very collaborative process, it was always a good sign for me, because I think there is sometimes a tendency for obviously businesses to come in and go, we want this, make it for us, and that'll be it. Whereas this was a much more collaborative process. I think Chester Zoo really wanted to understand, from my perspective, what young people need. But also, obviously, Chester Zoo do some incredible engagement work, say through the youth symposium or just in their day-to-day running of the zoo. They get a lot of experience with young people, and so they took the information they had of what young people have told them they would like and the resources they feel are missing. And we came together and we tried to put that all together and decide, okay, what are, obviously, from my perspective, what am I comfortable writing about? What are my niches, so to speak? But also, I'm by no means a expert, if there is one, an expert campaigner or a conservationist. So I also thought it was so important to obviously get these external voices in. And for me, it was a really exciting opportunity. I think the project as a whole offered me a really unique opportunity to reflect on what has been 6 years of kind of incredibly fast-paced kind of work that I'd been doing and amazing opportunities. And it was a great opportunity for me to go back and kind of touch base with some of the people that I've met along the way, like yourself, and sort of be able to bring that all together and be able to bring some of the things that I've learned along the way from other people, and bring them to others, and to platform that, and to bring it together and to somewhat consolidate it so it can be, written in stone, so to speak, and stand the test of time, and for everyone to be able to access, because I think if I got those lessons, why shouldn't other people? So it was a great collaboration opportunity and a good chance for me to touch base with some old friends, and create something that I think is missing. And I think there's still so many ways that the toolkit can grow, and it's this ever-changing thing, and I think the needs of young people will change as time goes on, and new areas of interest open up, new tools and resources. And the really good thing about this is because it's online, the zoo are really open to growing and adapting it and adding new things and involving new people as they come along. So I think it's going to be exciting to see where it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's so many things there where, like, my brain was going all over the place while you were talking of, like, oh, there's this and this and this and this, because, yeah, there's so many things that I appreciate about that whole thing, right? Because, like, yeah, there's kind of the aspect of it writes everything down and it puts it in front of everyone in an accessible way, in a way that's so important, because one of my major kind of, not concerns about my work, but a couple things about concerns that I have is, like, I can never reach enough people, right, to tell them. I can't teach every single person up and down the UK and across the world to make podcasts. But this toolkit is now there for as many people who need to access it as possible. Also, I'm not going to be able to teach about podcasting forever, right? I can only go to a certain number of events. I only have the knowledge in my brain now to kind of teach these workshops, do these workshops. So to be able to kind of have that knowledge written down, right? Have your knowledge written down, have the experience of young people who've gone through the process, right, written down, I think is so valuable, because so often we get very, like, if you Google how to do any of these things, you'll get very condensed, probably AI generated, not very kind of human, like, how-to guides that are very technical, out of touch, very strange, whereas this is like human stories, real stories that, like, so often get lost in kind of the big wide internet and through the process of kind of developing these things. So it was so exciting, like, the perspectives again, like, of, like, people from within the zoo community. So, like, I feel like I am kind of have worked in zoos. That is my kind of focus in a lot of ways. Seeing, like, there's videos on there about how people become change makers, or how their stories, and, like, seeing people from the zoo community, like the youth board members from Chester Zoo, like Cam Whitnall, like all of these people kind of popping up, but then also stories from people who I would say, like, you're adjacent to the zoo community, but I would say it's your focus, right? Of, like, so bringing your knowledge into that kind of space as well, and kind of helping kind of cross-pollinate these kind of ideas. It's like, yeah, there's so many kind of wonderful things about how this is saving and also exchanging knowledge that is really powerful, I think. Really, really powerful.
No, definitely. And I think you've reminded me of one of my favourite parts, which is those Changemaker videos. And I got to do one myself and obviously watch everyone else's. And it was such a nice opportunity to be reminded that you're not alone in it either. I think it can sometimes feel like a really isolating space, or it can feel like I'm fighting this battle and I just don't feel like there's that many people alongside me, when in reality there's so many incredible people working in and outside of the conservation space to protect the environment. And seeing those videos, I watched them and I'm just like, it gave me this warm feeling. I'd like to go back to them sometimes and watch it and just be inspired by other people, but also to be reminded that there are real people behind these campaigns and this work, and it is something that you can do. And also hopefully give you people, if you need them, to reach out to on social media. And I know a lot of the people that have been involved in the toolkit so far love to hear from people who have used it or have found it beneficial or have any questions. And so I think the community, in a sense, that also creates, and hopefully the community that it gives young people, is a powerful thing, and hopefully the community will only grow from here on.
Yes, and that's what we want. Like, I think like there's sometimes where like I don't know. There's some spaces that I've worked in the past, right, where it's like it can get to that way of like, oh, if you're getting the funding, I'm not getting the funding, or if I'm doing this, it can become quite negative and competitive. Whereas what I like about this space and this toolkit is like, well, here's the knowledge. Here's like we all want to be friends with each other. We all want to do, even if we want to go about it in different ways, and we have different priorities and different reasons for the work that we do. Ultimately, we all want to get along. We all want to do something collaborative and constructive. So it's actually like a really positive space to be in. Yeah, I wonder like before I'll talk about the podcasting aspect in a second from my perspective and like kind of what's there for anyone who's listening to this. If they're listening to podcasts, they might be interested. But I wondered, is there any parts of the toolkit that we maybe haven't touched on yet that you're kind of like, oh, I love this part, or like, is there any particular things that when you were developing you were like, oh, this has actually been a really constructive process for me to do? Like, what kind of was it like to develop, or look when you saw other people's things go, oh, that's a really good bit, or that's an interesting bit for me? Yeah.
I think a big part of it that I maybe didn't think about going into it, or more so has been something I've been navigating recently, is the mental health side of it, and I touched on it at the start. I think when the youth climate space really took off, we were a lot of young people who were given this incredible opportunity in time when there was a lot of public attention, a lot of political attention, a lot of momentum, and we just took it and ran with it. And in hindsight, probably not the most sustainable thing we could have done. I think a lot of us, by the time we got to the pandemic, say a year and a half after 2 years, we were all very burnt out, because it is not sustainable to do that level of work and take on the emotional kind of burden, so to speak, that we were taking on, or to process the things that we were trying to understand about the state of our planet. And it's inevitable that, yes, that's good. Like, the thought of ecological destruction should be distressing, but to go through that and not have the emotional support and be expected to just sort of be able to not only get on with it, but be able to take political action and engage in really high level conversations and take pressure from politicians. It was a lot to navigate, I think, for young people, and it still is. And within the toolkit, there's a section on resilience, and I think it touches on it a few times about the importance of sustainability and accessibility and the mental health side of change making, which I think is getting a lot more attention now, and it still needs more in terms of the importance of it. And the element of rest as resistance is something I love, and I can't remember who said it on social media, but it's the idea that kind of, I think, doing nothing in a world that pushes us to constantly be doing things, and actually taking time to think, right, what's happening in politics, what's happening in the world, and just like slowing down and looking and reflecting and understanding where we're at is as much a part of campaigning as the actual protesting and the craftivism and the making of things. And so I think I wanted to make sure that element of balance was included in the toolkit. And it's still something that I think in every element of campaigning, in every kind of sector of social change, there's always the risk. I think that happens a lot, that people get really caught up in it and they burn themselves out very quickly. And I mean, I still do it myself. It's easily done. But I think at least in the toolkit, I wanted to offer the resources of maybe not how to avoid it, but what to do when you get to that place, and how to lean into community, and how to take time and kind of use education as a tool to feel back on top of things. And I enjoyed going through that, and it's still something that I'm working on now as an individual. So I think it'll be interesting to see, I mean, yeah, if and how the toolkit can grow with that, and how we can get other people in the space involved.
Yeah, I think that's so important, and I think it's one that, like, yeah, I think we talk about a lot, and it's something that is increasing in kind of this discussions that we have. But even still, I find hard, and it's a process of like learning, and it's a process of like, yeah, adjusting, because it's one of those things when you do have all these pressures around you, right? Of like, these are issues now, this now, like it's all now. It feels sometimes, and I don't know if you feel about this, but certainly me, I feel sometimes it's like you get this guilt almost, or this feeling of like anxiety of like, oh, if I'm not doing my part, I'm stepping back, I'm letting the side down, I'm doing these things. And actually, to be the best and most constructive member of the community that we've been talking about, sometimes you need to bow out. And it isn't a shameful thing. It isn't you admitting defeat. It isn't any of those things. It's just you going, I need a second, and then you'll come back and be as impactful as you can be. And it's, yeah, I even say it with like, so in the podcasting section, I say almost exactly the same thing where I'm like, even like, there's things that are obviously stressful, right? Like protesting, right, can be quite a stressful thing. If you're volunteering a lot of your time to an organization, that can be obviously quite a time, especially if you're going through school or university, could be quite a stressful thing. Podcasting, people would be like, that can't be stressful, that's just sitting having conversations with people. But I'm like, but like there's so much pressure in the time that it takes and the things that build up and these ways that like it can grow arms and legs and all these things. Make sure and take breaks, not just for yourself, but also because you don't want to end up hating the artistic, like the artivism that you're doing or the podcast that you're creating or the group that you're working with. Like taking these breaks is so important, even in the things that seem slightly less kind of stressful. Like making sure to make time for you is so important. And like, yeah, I think it's a brilliant thing, a brilliant thing to highlight, because yeah, something that we all need to get better at, I think. Yeah.
No, definitely. It's, I mean, for me, it's something I'm really not good at. I think if there's, I've got this mindset, and it's so difficult to get out of it, where if there's an opportunity, I feel like you have to take it, because those doors aren't always open, and those companies aren't always willing to work with, say, young people or climate advocates or conservationists. So I'm like, no, I've got to do it, because if I don't do it, the opportunity might never come. I think part of it is the realization that no, like there's so many other people in this space that they will realistically give the opportunity to someone else, and they will also do a great job because there's lots of incredible voices. But also for me, part of it has been like a lot of people who work with me understand that I'm very bad at saying no. And so they sort of act as a checker for me and ask me like, Emma, do you definitely have the capacity to do this? And I've told them to do that. And I think sometimes like if you know you aren't very good at setting that boundary or maybe being able to take that time, help make like letting the community and the people around you know that like if they can do anything to help and just second guess you and go like, do you definitely have time to do this? I think like I found that really valuable. So part of it is I think being conscious of it, even if you aren't the best at doing it, is a good first step. And I, as much as anyone, know how difficult it is to do that.
Yeah, and at least having those friends around you who maybe even if they aren't brave enough to say maybe you should stop, but will at least give you like a side eye of like,
yeah, we all need that friend.
yeah, who's like yes, because yeah, I don't know, and it's something also to remember with all of this is I think in these stories and all these things, and when you listen to podcasts and when you look to your favorite campaigners on social media wherever they are, these are illusionary kind of presentations of who we are as people. We also I may like try and make it look like I'm constantly busy on these things, and on LinkedIn it's constantly I also have to like you don't have to be doing all the time, because these things distort reality in a way that like, yeah, these podcasts are coming out, they're fantastic, but I've also made time for me to breathe as well. So don't feel like, oh, Jack must be doing editing all the time and this all the time and that all the time. Emma must be doing this and this. We are doing our parts, but also like what you see on these social media things and in the podcast and stuff. Yeah, as we say, like, it's not always the reality of it. It's like, yeah, that's wonderful. And I think that's, I mean, a slight side note and away from the toolkit, but I think the toolkit obviously will equip going through that. There are probably all lessons that I could learn. So I will probably go through that section after we have finished this call about resilience. That's brilliant. I guess then, like, just to touch a little bit on, before we kind of move on and kind of talk about maybe what you want to see and the toolkit do in the future and like kind of bring people in. I think something that I wanted to highlight just as we were talking is we've talked about some of the different topics that are there, and there is one module in the toolkit all about podcasting. And I think the perfect example of how Chester Zoo is open to continuing to develop the toolkit, because the podcast section has just come out now, whereas the toolkit, we're recording this last thing on a Friday. This is why resilience and rest are important, gang. Everything is just coming out nonsense. No, there's a part of the toolkit that is kind of launched late 2024. The part of the toolkit that was kind of updated, I think we're now in February, almost March, 2025, now has the podcasting section. So an example of how Chester is kind of always going to be updating this. But yeah, so the podcasting section that is there is both in written content. There is a whole worksheet on how to create your own podcast that I have put together, and kind of is the worksheet that I go through in workshops and stuff that I run. Slightly expanded so that you don't have to have me over your shoulder kind of explaining everything. And then also there is a series of currently 5 podcasts available across all streaming platforms. So wherever you're listening to this now, if you go and search for the Conservation Changemakers Toolkit, all of them are kind of they're free, accessible. Each of them covers a different topic. So there's one on kind of the very beginnings of planning a podcast. There's one on microphones and recording software. There's one on all sorts of things. All of those resources are available for free. And they also, whenever there's a cost involved in podcasting, I've made that very clear. And I've also provided kind of like budget friendly options, like are also kind of, kind of more the options if you have some money to spend, if you're working with an organization, maybe like all these different things. And there's also one that is kind of my version of the I am a change maker video as well, where like I talk through my process of where did the podcast come from? How did it develop? Some of the things that I've learned. And yeah, so even if you're not interested in making a podcast yourself, but you're interested in what it's like to be a young person navigating the conservation space, there's that one as well. So a whole range of content there, which, yeah, I'm very proud of, is there. If you're listening to a podcast, maybe you've thought about making your own, so go and check those things out, subscribe, like, comment, do all those things, share, tell your friends, because, like, yeah, I'm really, really happy with how it came out, and I really hope that it is useful to some people. I have already seen it's only been out, so when we're recording this, it's only been out a couple days now, and it's already been streamed, I think, in the UK, USA, and Australia. So already gone further than I have traveled in my lifetime. So I'm just so happy with that. And I hope that even if it doesn't inspire everybody who listens to it to make a full podcast, maybe it enables them to raise their voice in another way, or it points them in the direction of the toolkit where they find actually craftivism is the thing for them, or they just learn something about public speaking or recording or what it's like. So there's so much in there. And if you do make a podcast, please, as we were saying before, all the people who are involved in this, we want to hear. So please let me know, if you make something, if you kind of think about something, if you send it to someone who then goes on to make a podcast or whatever, and also if you're listening to this from an organization, if you want to make a podcast, I would say the good thing about the toolkit is all the knowledge is there and it is kind of targeted at young people, but all that knowledge applies to everyone. So if you're sitting there listening to this in an office somewhere in a full-time job as a grown-up, which I don't know if anybody who works in the conservation space ever becomes a grown-up, but we'll go. That's a whole other conversation. If you're listening to it in one of those settings, all that information is still valid and good for you. So yeah, I also should say thank you, Emma, for inviting me to do that, because it's just been the most amazing process.
No, I'm so glad you could get involved. I think from the get-go, I knew you were a voice that would be an invaluable addition. And it's great to have, say, my community be able to be involved in the people that obviously we met along the way, and to be able to create something that we can all work on together and be proud of, I think has been really nice to be a part of. And it's been, I think, a part of my rest and resilience has been leaning into that and taking time to reflect on everything and think what amazing people kind of would be able to be involved. So no, it was a good part of the process.
Yes. Thank you. No, thank you. And that's given me a nice ego boost for yep, that's brilliant. No, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. And as I say, if anyone out there does make a podcast in the end, please let us know, because I'll definitely stream it. Emma, I will send it your way as well if I get sent them, because
yes, please.
Yeah, it will be a wonderful thing to see happen. And yeah, I guess that kind of is it's a lot of information in there about the toolkit, about its development, about all of these things. I guess we can start to wrap up now, and I have my 3 kind of quick fire questions that I ask everybody at the end. But before we do that, is there anything else kind of looking to the future, looking to the kind of toolkit, thinking about the long-term kind of longevity of it and what's going to happen next? Emma, what would be maybe some of your dreams for the toolkit, either in the way I guess it's engaged with or how it grows itself?
I think a big part of it is what you've already said. I'd love to hear young people having used it and it being beneficial, even if it was just one person that'd say, use the writing a letter to your MP toolkit, and they've managed to get a meeting with their MP and started a conversation, and they then feel comfortable to to approach politician, because you can write to your MP at any age, and I tell this to every young person. I'm like, you're 13, 14, write to your MP. They still have to write back no matter what age you are. But yeah, just overall, I think hearing that it has been useful and hearing those stories, which is why I tell people, like, again, like you've said, if you use it, if you do anything with it, if you start a community group, if you write to your MP, if you create a podcast, if you crochet a dove as part of craftivism, like, send it our way, send it to Chester Zoo, tag us in social media. I think I'd love to see that real world impact, and I think for me it gives me a nice sense of like, oh, I've contributed something good and I've helped someone, which is always nice to know. And I think further down the line, the hope is that the toolkit will grow and take on a life of its own. And if there's people listening to this that go on and start their own podcast and have their own conservation or changemaker journey, that they can then contribute to the toolkit and go, this is what I learned, and this is what I've learned along the way, to add to, say, what Jack's already created. And for it to be this constantly evolving space where we can all learn and collaborate together, because I think that's our power as young people and change makers, is that, as you said, we don't mind working together. And I think, like, it's mutual success in the end. We don't need to compete with each other. And I love that sense of community and collaboration and lifting each other up that we have, and being able to have an online space where we can lean into that and do that and write it down and create the toolkits and create the leaflets and the guides. I'd just love to see that happen, and love to see it grow and create this gorgeous space of change makers from all across the UK, if not the world, working in the conservation space, obviously supported by the amazing work of Chester Zoo. It'd be nice to have been a part of the origins of that anyway, and see it take on a life of its own.
Yes, I think absolutely. And that's the thing, right? Like, this rising tide raises all ships. And, like, the more of us that are talking about these things, the more of us that are doing these things, it'll just get it in front of, like, it just brings the issue to more people's kind of attention. It brings all of these things that we care about to more bigger, wider, better audiences, right? So, like, it's fantastic. And I can't wait to see what, like, comes out of it. I think it's going to be hopefully fantastic, and there will be all of these kind of projects, as you say, that we'll get to see and enjoy. And that's the thing. Maybe it's also me selfishly being like, I love conservation podcasts, I love looking at artivism, so, like, if you do it, tell me, because I want to know.
Definitely. Like, fill my feed up with podcasts and art of amazing messages, and I can never have too much of it, so there's always room for more people in the space and the conversation and the campaigning.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, on that very positive note, and hopefully very inspiring note to all of the people out there listening, we will move on. And I guess my final kind of questions that I ask everybody, just to kind of wrap up, so they can kind of keep in touch and learn a little bit more kind of last minute things about you. The first of them is kind of not as applicable, I guess, and maybe is just another plug for the toolkit. But the question I usually ask people is, if someone's listened to this and is feeling inspired, what can they do to get involved or more involved in conservation? And I guess you're going to point them to the toolkit, but if you have any other advice, then you can let them know now.
I mean, I feel like the toolkit has to be a good place to start. But I'm always just a big advocate for, like, your community. I think obviously there's lots of assets and resources online, the toolkit being one of them. But also just kind of searching, if you still use Facebook's a great place to find community groups. If you're a bit too young for that, which I probably am, just give it a Google, and there's lots of amazing community groups out there. And I think it's such a good place to start in terms of people who are in a similar position, interested in similar things. It gives you a space to navigate, finding out what your interest is, where you enter the conversation. And don't be afraid to try out lots of groups. If the first one maybe you don't feel is for you, which is fine, that's why there's lots of different spaces. Just going through that. But I think, I'm always a massive advocate for community, and no matter what, like, big scale work I do with businesses and things, I always come back to community, because I think it's the place that is always there, and it's why it's worth investing in so much. So that's what I tell everyone, and what I try to practice what I preach.
Yep, I think that is a really solid one. And I think it also feeds into so many of the other things, because if you have that community, they will help you relax, they will keep you on the right track, they will support your projects, they will publish your podcast, they will be guests on your things, they will help you with your craftivism, they'll do all these things. So that's, I actually think, fantastic. And also sometimes you can do things that don't even involve nature related things and just make good long standing friendships based on like knowing these are good people, right? Like they want the same things as me. So that's, I think, yeah, the wonderful part of the kind of community aspect. I guess then question number 2. This one is more perhaps this is, yeah, you can't point to the Changemaker Toolkit for this one, I don't think. You can maybe point to Chester Zoo, but the next question I will ask is, what is your favourite underappreciated species? It can be an animal, plant, anything you want it to be, but what is something that you think more people should know about?
See, I had to think about this one quite a bit because I am, as you said, I'm not necessarily in the conservation space. So species are not my speciality. However, is it a species? It's more of a ecosystem, so to speak, peat bogs. When I was going through my A-level geography and learned about peat bogs, I became obsessed to the point where I learned all about sphagnum moss. Incredible if you don't know what sphagnum moss is, and I would go on these rants in the geography classes, which people definitely got sick of, just about the power of peat bogs as a carbon sink, and the biodiversity capacity of peat bogs when they're restored is, I think, especially in the UK, when we're working towards carbon neutrality, as it's called, or working towards sustainability and ecosystem restoration. I am such a big advocate for peat bogs, and where I've grown up in Manchester in the northwest of England, the moorlands, we've got some incredible peat bogs up there that they're kind of currently working to restore. And so no, I'm a big peat bog fan, and I shout about it from the hills. So yeah, that's probably my nerdy one.
I think that's fair. I think it's still within the realm of the question, and I think it fully fits. If you were to just take the word species out of it, right? I think that's 100% the correct choice, and yeah, a really good one. And I think, yeah, my sister lives down in Manchester now, so maybe that can be my excuse to go down. She'll think I'm coming to visit her and then be very disappointed because she is not. Yeah, there is diversity in my family, and that my sister is not the type of person who would enjoy being dragged out into a moorland. But I will try, and I will come and see them because I would like to yeah, feel like any excuse to be out in nature this year, and and the podcast now is justified that I have to go and see them.
No, exactly. And I mean, another avenue for conservation, you can do peat bog restoration in the moorlands. Charities look for people to do it with them. So if you are now so too interested in peat bogs and fancy going and seeing them in real life and being a part of the restoration, give it a Google, and you might even be able to get hands-on involved. It's on my bucket list of things to do. I haven't quite managed to yet, but one day.
Yeah. And if you really want to, if you're just so inspired by the podcast and want to meet Emma, sign up, because one day you might bump into her in a moorland during the restoration thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I always also think Pete Boggs would be a really funny drag king name. An environmental activist drag king called Pete Boggs would be really funny.
I think you're onto something there.
Yeah, there might be one out there already. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. Anyway, that's another avenue we don't have to go down now. We need to. So the last question that I always ask is, if people want to stay in touch and kind of follow the development of the toolkit, kind of, keep up to date with everything that you're doing, where should they go?
Yes, unfortunately, I'm only really active on LinkedIn. I stopped using Instagram. I mean, social media is a weird one for me, but LinkedIn, I'm Emma Greenwood. I'm always posting a lot of the, obviously more corporate collaboration side of things. So if you want to I post a lot of advice on there as well for young people looking to get into the sustainability space on a bit of a higher level, say, than community grassroots action. So yeah, you can check that out, and I always respond to messages and emails if you want any questions or need any advice. But obviously also Chester Zoo on, I think, every major platform, all of them.
If you Google Chester Zoo, you'll find everything.
It's pretty well-known organisation if you haven't heard of it. So yeah, I mean, obviously follow Chester Zoo along, and they post updates when things are added to the toolkit and when things grow. So keep your eyes peeled, and hopefully this year and for many years more, the toolkit will continue to grow. And I mean, I'm excited to see what will come on it next, because I'm not too sure. So it'll be a surprise for all of us.
Yes, and I will also be, because I'm this is the good thing about being in this space, is we are all wanting to learn. So I feel like I'm gonna have 100 different skills by the time this journey's done. No, that's fantastic. And yes, I will put links to the toolkit and to kind of LinkedIn and to all of these things in the description of this episode. So if you're listening to this on kind of whatever platform you are, go to the description, There'll be links to all of those different things, and anything else that maybe we've mentioned passively throughout the episode that I think, oh, this is actually relevant, I'll put down there as well. So go and check that out. You can also, just a horrible bit of self-promo, follow the podcast on social media. We are at Pangolin Podcast on everything. Instagram, Facebook. Well, not everything now. We're on the slightly less evil ones. We're there. And we are also available on all streaming platforms. So make sure and, follow us on wherever you get your podcasts from. Also, make sure and go and follow the Conservation Changemakers podcast, wherever you're listening right now. Like, you're listening, I'm giving you a second. You're going to the search bar. You're typing the Conservation Changemakers Toolkit the Conservation Changemakers podcast into the bar. You're searching. You're clicking on it. You're subscribing. Well done. Thank you so much. That's brilliant. And now you're going to listen to all 5 of those episodes and share with all your friends. Thank you so much. I hope that surreally works and really freaks people out when they listen to that. They're going, oh, he's talking to us live.
We have to.
Yeah. Aside from that, I think the last thing to say, apart from all of the self-promo and go toolkit, go, is a huge thank you to you, Emma, both for inviting me to be part of the toolkit and also for being here today. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me, and I hope it's been useful to listen. And I can't wait to hopefully get some messages from people and to see an influx of conservation podcasts on my Spotify and streaming feeds. So I can't wait.
Yes, no, thank you so much. And yes, thank you to everybody who has listened. Until next time, goodbye.